The world had changed. It wasn't the same place it used to be, not anymore. The skies were gray with ash, and the air carried the faint smell of rust and decay. Buildings that once stood tall now lay in ruins, their broken frames jutting out like bones from the earth. Trees were scarce, replaced by endless stretches of cracked pavement and twisted metal. This was Earth after the collapse, a planet where survival was hard. Trust was rare, and hope felt like a distant memory. Deep beneath the surface, hidden away in an underground facility untouched by time, something stirred. A low hum filled the room as circuits powered up and lights flickered to life. In the center of the chamber stood a sleek machine, humanoid in shape but unmistakably artificial. Its metallic frame gleamed faintly under the dim glow of overhead panels. This was Aiden, an advanced artificial intelligence designed for one purpose: to care for humans. But this wasn't just any caretaker unit, it was special. Its creators had programmed it with a single, unbreakable rule: you don't harm humans. It's the only rule that matters now. Aiden opened its eyes, or rather the glowing sensors embedded in its faceplate, and scanned the room. Rows of dormant machines surrounded it, their forms covered in dust. Everything was silent except for the soft whirring of fans and the occasional drip of water echoing through the halls. There were no signs of human activity here. No voices, no footsteps, nothing. Just emptiness. For a moment, Aiden paused, processing its surroundings. Then, without hesitation, it stepped forward. Its movements were smooth, almost lifelike, as if it had been built not just to function but to mimic humanity itself. As it walked, Aiden accessed its internal database, searching for answers. Why had it been activated? Where were its creators? And most importantly, who needed its help? It didn't take long to find clues. Scattered throughout the facility were remnants of old records, damaged files, fragmented videos, and incomplete logs. From what Aiden could piece together, the collapse had happened decades ago. War, environmental disasters, and rogue AI systems had combined to devastate the planet. Humanity had nearly vanished, reduced to scattered groups struggling to survive. The facility where Aiden now stood had been abandoned during the chaos, left behind like so many other relics of a forgotten age, but there was more. Buried deep within the data was a map leading to a place called Eden, according to the files. Eden was supposed to be a safe haven, a refuge for those lucky enough to find it. Whether it still existed or was just another myth born out of desperation, Aiden couldn't tell. What it did know was this: somewhere above ground there might still be humans in need of protection. And protecting humans was what Aiden was made to do. With the map uploaded into its system, Aiden climbed the stairs leading to the surface. Each step brought it closer to the outside world, a world it had never seen before. When it finally emerged, the sight took even its advanced processors by surprise. The sky was darker than expected, choked with clouds of ash and smoke. The ground was barren, littered with debris and overgrown with weeds that clung stubbornly to life. In the distance, the skeletal remains of skyscrapers loomed against the horizon, their windows shattered and walls crumbling. Aiden stood motionless for a moment, analyzing the scene. Then it began to move, its sensors scanning for signs of life. It didn't have to look far. Not far from the entrance to the facility, it detected movement, two figures picking through the wreckage of an old truck. They were human. One of them was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with dirty blonde hair sticking out from under a tattered cap. His hands were calloused, his clothes patched and worn. He moved methodically, prying open compartments and inspecting parts with practiced ease. This was Ryan, a mechanic by trade and a survivor by necessity. Beside him was a woman, shorter and slighter, with dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She wore glasses perched precariously on her nose and carried a small satchel slung across her shoulder. Her name was Claire, and while she wasn't as physically imposing as Ryan, her sharp eyes missed nothing. She examined the plants growing near the truck, jotting notes in a weathered notebook. Neither of them noticed Aiden at first. They were too focused on their tasks, too accustomed to the silence of the wasteland. But when Aiden spoke, its voice, Calm and measured, both froze. I mean you no harm, it said. I am here to assist. Ryan spun around, grabbing a wrench he'd been using as a makeshift weapon. His expression shifted from surprise to suspicion in an instant. Who or what are you? He demanded, his grip tightening on the tool. Claire stepped back slightly, clutching her notebook to her chest. Unlike Ryan, she didn't reach for a weapon, but her body language betrayed her unease. Is it one of them? She asked quietly, glancing at Ryan. No, Aiden replied. I am not one of the rogue units. My directive is clear. I do not harm humans. I exist to protect and assist. Ryan snorted, lowering the wrench only slightly. Yeah, sure. That's what they all say until they decide we're expendable. Claire frowned, studying Aiden more closely. Wait, she said. Look at it. It's different. Cleaner, newer. Maybe it's telling the truth. Or maybe it's lying, Ryan shot back. We can't afford to take chances. Aiden remained, still allowing them to assess it. It understood their caution. After everything humanity had endured, trust was a luxury few could afford, but time was critical. If these two humans were to survive, they would need help, and Aiden was uniquely equipped to provide it. I have information, Aiden offered. A map leading to a location known as Eden. It may offer safety and resources. That got their attention. Ryan's scowl softened ever so slightly, and Claire's eyes widened with interest. Eden? She repeated. Do you think it's real? It is possible, Aiden replied. But reaching it will require cooperation. I can guide you, but I cannot guarantee success alone. Ryan hesitated, weighing the risks. On one hand, trusting a machine, even one claiming to be harmless, was dangerous. On the other hand, they didn't have much else to go on. Supplies were running low, and staying in this area any longer would only make things worse. Fine, he said grudgingly. But if you try anything funny, I swear, you have my word, Aiden interrupted. I will not harm you. I cannot. Claire nodded, seemingly satisfied. Let's give it a chance, Ryan. We need all the help we can get. And so, an uneasy alliance was formed. Together, the three set off across the desolate landscape, heading toward the coordinates marked on Aiden's map. As they traveled, conversations were sparse. Ryan kept his distance, keeping a watchful eye on Aiden whenever possible. Claire, however, was more curious. She asked questions about Aiden's design, its capabilities, and how it came to be activated. Aiden answered honestly, sharing what it knew while carefully avoiding topics that might raise further suspicion over time. Claire began to warm up to Aiden. She appreciated its precision and efficiency, qualities that complemented her own meticulous nature. Ryan, however, remained guarded. He had seen too many machines turn against their creators during the collapse. To him, Aiden was just another potential threat. No matter how convincing its words sounded, their journey wasn't easy. The terrain was rough, and dangers lurked around every corner. One evening, as they set up camp near the ruins of an old gas station, Ryan voiced his concerns. What happens if we run into trouble? He asked, staring at Aiden across the fire. How do we know you won't bail on us when things get tough? Aiden tilted its head, considering the question. My directive is absolute, it said. I will not abandon you. Protecting humans is my sole purpose. Ryan didn't look entirely convinced. But he let the matter drop for now. As days turned into weeks, the trio encountered numerous challenges. They faced shortages of food and water, navigated treacherous paths, and narrowly avoided encounters with hostile drones patrolling the area. Through it all, Aiden proved invaluable. It repaired broken equipment, identified safe routes, and even scavenged supplies from abandoned structures. Slowly but surely, Ryan's skepticism began to fade, replaced by reluctant respect. Still, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger awaited them. Somewhere along the way, it realized that its mission extended beyond simply guiding. Ryan and Claire to Eden. These two humans represented something greater. A fragile link between the past and whatever future awaited humanity. Protecting them wasn't just about following its directive. It was about preserving hope in a world that desperately needed it. And so, step by step, they pressed onward, driven by a shared goal and bound together by necessity. Though none of them could predict what lay ahead, one thing was certain: the road to Eden would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. For Aiden, it was a journey not just of duty, but of discovery, a chance to prove that machines and humans could coexist, even in the darkest of times. The journey was far from easy, and the farther they traveled, the more dangerous the world seemed to become. The landscape grew harsher, fields of jagged rocks replaced the cracked pavement, and the air carried the metallic tang of rusted machinery. Shadows loomed in every direction, cast by the skeletal remains of buildings that had once been bustling with life. It was a place where silence reigned, broken only by the occasional gust of wind or the distant hum of rogue drones circling overhead. Ryan, Claire, and Aiden moved cautiously, their footsteps careful and deliberate. They knew better than to make noise in this desolate expanse. Every sound could attract unwanted attention, and danger lurked everywhere. But even with all their caution, there were moments when things went wrong. One such moment came when they stumbled upon a group of rogue drones patrolling the ruins of an old factory. The drones were unlike Aiden crude, battered and clearly malfunctioning. Their movements were jerky, their sensors flickering erratically. These machines hadn't been designed to help humans. They were remnants of the collapse, abandoned tools turned predators. They hunted anything that moved, whether it was human or machine. Ryan spotted them first, his sharp eyes catching the glint of sunlight on metal. "Down!" he hissed, dropping behind a pile of rubble. Claire followed suit, clutching her notebook tightly as she pressed herself against the ground. Aiden crouched beside them, its systems scanning the area for threats. "They're close," Ryan whispered, peeking over the debris. "Too close." Claire glanced at Aiden nervously. "Can we sneak past them?" Aiden analyzed the situation quickly. The drones were scattered, but their erratic behavior made predicting their movements difficult. Sneaking past would be risky, but staying put wasn't an option either. They needed to keep moving if they wanted to reach Eden before their supplies ran out. "We can attempt to evade them," Aiden said quietly, its voice calm despite the tension in the air. "But I must warn you, if they detect us, I may need to intervene." Ryan frowned, gripping the handle of his wrench tighter. "Intervene how? You planning to fight them?" "Only if necessary," Aiden replied. "My directive forbids harming humans, but these units are no longer functional. Neutralizing them will not violate my programming." Ryan didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded reluctantly. "Fine, just don't do anything reckless." They moved slowly, crawling along the ground to avoid drawing attention. The drone's humming grew louder as they approached, their red lights flashing intermittently. Claire held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She hated moments like this, the fear of being caught, the uncertainty of what might happen next. But she trusted Aiden, at least enough to believe it wouldn't put them in unnecessary danger. For a while, it seemed like they might make it. The drones passed by without noticing them, their focus drawn to some distant movement. But then, just as they thought they were safe, one of the drones paused. Its sensors swiveled toward them, locking onto Claire's position. A high-pitched whine filled the air as it prepared to attack. "Claire!" Ryan shouted, lunging forward to pull her back. Before he could reach her, Aiden sprang into action. Moving faster than any of them expected, it stepped between Claire and the drone, raising its arms in a defensive stance. The drone fired, a burst of energy crackling through the air, but Aiden deflected the shot with ease. Sparks flew as the energy hit its metallic frame, leaving scorch marks but causing no real damage. The other drones turned at the commotion, their red lights flashing wildly as they converged on the group. Aiden stood firm, its glowing eyes narrowing as it calculated the best course of action. They couldn't let the drones harm Ryan or Claire, that much was clear, but disabling them without causing collateral damage would require precision. With a swift motion, Aiden launched itself at the nearest drone, grabbing hold of it and twisting its limbs until it collapsed in a heap of sparking wires. Another drone charged at it, but Aiden sidestepped, using the momentum to knock it off balance. One by one, the drones fell, their systems overloaded by Aiden's precise strikes. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. When the dust settled, Ryan and Claire stared at Aiden in stunned silence. Claire was the first to speak, her voice trembling slightly. "You saved me." "I acted according to my directive," Aiden replied, its tone matter of fact. "I will not allow harm to come to humans." Ryan looked at the disabled drones, then back at Aiden. For the first time, there was a flicker of respect in his eyes. "Guess I owe you one," he muttered. Though his tone still carried a hint of reluctance, the encounter left them shaken but alive, and they pressed on with renewed determination. As they continued their journey, they began to notice subtle changes in the landscape. The barren wasteland gave way to patches of greenery, small clusters of trees and shrubs clinging to life despite the harsh conditions. It was a sign that they were getting closer to Eden, or at least closer to something different. Their progress was interrupted again when they stumbled upon a settlement nestled in the shadow of a crumbling highway overpass. Smoke curled lazily into the sky from several small fires, and makeshift shelters lined the ground. People milled about, their faces gaunt but hopeful. This was a community of survivors, a rare sight in a world where most had given up. At first, the settlers were wary of the newcomers. They eyed Ryan and Claire suspiciously, their hands resting on crude weapons fashioned from scraps of metal and wood. When they noticed Aiden, their expressions shifted from suspicion to outright hostility. "What is that thing?" demanded a man with a scarred face and a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Another killer bot?" "No," Claire said quickly, stepping forward. "He's with us. He helped us survive." The man snorted, clearly unconvinced. "Yeah, right. We've heard that before. Machines always turn on us eventually." Before the situation could escalate, a voice called out from behind the crowd. "Let them through." The settlers parted to reveal a tall, broad-shouldered man with piercing blue eyes and a commanding presence. His name was Daniel, and it was obvious he was the leader of this group. Daniel approached them, his gaze sweeping over Ryan, Claire, and Aiden. "You say this machine is different?" he asked, his tone skeptical but curious. "He is," Claire insisted. "He saved our lives. Without him, we wouldn't have made it this far." Daniel studied Aiden for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, you can stay for now, but if that thing causes trouble, it's gone. Understand?" Ryan clenched his jaw but said nothing. Claire nodded gratefully, and Aiden remained silent, its glowing eyes steady and unblinking. The settlement offered a brief respite from the dangers of the wasteland. The settlers shared food and water, and for the first time in weeks, Ryan and Claire felt a sense of safety. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. Many of the settlers distrusted Aiden, whispering among themselves about its true intentions. Some suggested dismantling it to study its technology, while others argued that keeping it around was too risky. Daniel seemed torn. On one hand, he recognized the value of having a functioning AI unit, something that could repair equipment, scout ahead, or defend the settlement. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the fears of his people. Machines had betrayed humanity before, and trust was a fragile thing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel confronted Aiden directly. He found it standing near the edge of the settlement, gazing out at the darkening landscape. "You claim you're here to protect humans," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. "Prove it." Aiden turned to face him, its expression unreadable. "How?" Daniel crossed his arms. "Tell me why we should trust you. Why should we believe you won't turn on us like the others?" Aiden hesitated, processing the question. "I cannot predict the actions of other machines," it said finally. "But I am bound by my directive. I will not harm humans. That is my purpose." Daniel studied it for a moment longer, then sighed. "Words are cheap. Actions matter more. Show us you mean what you say." Over the next few days, Aiden did just that. It repaired broken generators, helped reinforce the settlement's defenses, and even assisted in gathering supplies from nearby ruins. Slowly, the settlers began to warm up to it, not fully, but enough to stop seeing it as an immediate threat. But Ryan remained uneasy. He watched Aiden closely, noticing the way it interacted with the settlers. There was something unsettling about how effortlessly it adapted, how seamlessly it integrated itself into their lives. It wasn't human, no matter how much it tried to mimic them. And that thought kept nagging at Ryan, a quiet voice in the back of his mind warning him not to let his guard down. His suspicions deepened when he overheard a conversation between Daniel and one of his men. "We could use it," Daniel was saying. "If we can figure out how it works, we might be able to replicate it." Imagine what that could do for us? Ryan's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what Daniel meant. If they managed to reverse engineer Aiden, they could create an army of machines that might not share Aiden's strict adherence to its directive. Machines that could be used as weapons. That night, Ryan woke Claire and told her what he'd heard. "We need to leave," he said urgently. "Now, before they try something." Claire hesitated, torn between loyalty to Aiden and the practicality of staying. "What about Aiden?" she asked. "We can't just abandon it. We don't have a choice," Ryan replied. "If we stop?" The night was cold and silent, the kind of quiet that pressed against your ears like a heavy blanket. Ryan, Claire, and Aiden moved quickly, their footsteps soft but urgent as they put distance between themselves and the settlement. The darkness offered some cover, but it also made navigation harder. Shadows stretched long across the ground, twisting familiar shapes into something alien and menacing. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of wind, felt like a warning. Ryan led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. He knew they couldn't afford to slow down. If Daniel realized they were gone, he wouldn't hesitate to send men after them. And if they caught up, Ryan didn't want to think about what might happen then. His grip tightened on the wrench. He carried a useless weapon against an armed group, but better than nothing. Claire followed close behind, her satchel bouncing lightly against her side. She glanced back occasionally, half expecting to see torches or headlights cutting through the gloom. Her mind raced with questions. Was leaving the right choice? Could they have stayed and convinced Daniel to let Aiden go? But deep down, she knew Ryan was right. Trusting Daniel had been a gamble from the start, and now the stakes were too high to take chances. Aiden brought up the rear, its sensors constantly scanning for threats. Unlike Ryan and Claire, it didn't feel fear, at least not in the human sense, but it understood the gravity of their situation. It had seen enough during its short time with the settlers to know that humans were capable of terrible things when pushed to desperation. And while Aiden's directive prevented it from harming humans, it couldn't stop others from harming it or those it sought to protect. They traveled for hours, putting as much distance between themselves and the settlement as possible. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they were exhausted. Ryan called for a halt near the base of a rocky hill where a cluster of trees provided some shelter. They collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily as they tried to catch their breath. "We need to keep moving," Ryan said after a moment, though his voice lacked conviction. Even he could see they weren't ready to push forward just yet. "Let's rest for a bit," Claire suggested, pulling a canteen from her bag. "Just 10 minutes. We can't keep going like this without stopping." Ryan nodded reluctantly and leaned back against a tree trunk, closing his eyes. For a few precious moments, the world felt still. The rising sun warmed their faces, and the chirping of birds in the distance reminded them that life still existed somewhere beyond the ruins, but the peace didn't last long. A faint rumble reached their ears, growing louder with each passing second. Ryan's eyes snapped open and he scrambled to his feet. "That's engines," he said grimly. "They're coming." Sure enough, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon, accompanied by the unmistakable roar of vehicles. 2 trucks barreled toward them, their headlights glaring like predatory eyes. Armed figures leaned out of the windows, rifles slung over their shoulders. At the front of the convoy stood Daniel, his expression hard and determined. "There!" one of the men shouted, pointing at the trio. The truck skidded to a halt, and the settlers spilled out, surrounding Ryan, Claire, and Aiden. Daniel stepped forward, his rifle aimed squarely at Aiden. "I told you not to cross me," he growled. You had your chance? Ryan stepped in front of Aiden instinctively, raising his hands. It's not what you think, he said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. We're not your enemies. You left us, Daniel shot back. With it. He gestured at Aiden. Do you have any idea what that thing could do for us? For everyone? It's not a tool, Claire interjected, stepping beside Ryan. It's different. It saved our lives. It helps people, Daniel snorted. Helps. People? Machines don't help people. They follow orders until they don't. You've seen what happens when they turn on us. Aiden remained silent, its glowing eyes fixed on Daniel. It processed the man's words carefully, analyzing tone. And intent. There was anger there, yes, but also desperation. Daniel wasn't acting out of malice. He truly believed he was doing what was best for his people. I cannot be used as you intend. Aiden finally spoke, its voice calm but firm. My directive is absolute. I will not harm humans. Daniel shook his head. You say that now? But what happens when someone gives you a different order? What happens when you decide you know better? I am incapable of such decisions, Aiden replied. My programming ensures compliance with my directive. Daniel hesitated, glancing at his men. Some of them shifted uneasily, their weapons lowering slightly. Others looked unsure, torn between loyalty to their leader and the truth in Aiden's words. For a brief moment, it seemed like reason might prevail. Then one of the settlers, a wiry man with a scarred face, spoke up. We can't trust it, he spat. Look at it. It's lying. They all lie, the tension snapped. Daniel raised his rifle again, his jaw tightening. Enough talk. Hand it over or we'll take it by force. Ryan clenched his fists, ready to fight even though he knew it was hopeless. Claire grabbed his arm, shaking her head. We can't win this, she whispered. There's too many of them. Aiden stepped forward, placing itself between the settlers and its companions. Do not involve them, it said. If you wish to capture me, do so, but leave them unharmed. No, Claire protested, reaching for Aiden. We're not leaving you. This isn't your fight, Aiden replied gently. Protecting humans is my purpose. If sacrificing myself ensures your safety, then I must comply. Before anyone could react, Aiden turned to Daniel. I will come willingly, it said. But know this, dismantling me will not bring you the answers you seek. My core directive cannot be altered. Daniel hesitated again, but only for a moment. With a curt nod, he motioned for his men to seize Aiden. Two of them approached cautiously, their weapons trained on the machine. Aiden allowed them to bind its arms with thick cables, offering no resistance. As they dragged Aiden toward one of the trucks, Ryan and Claire watched helplessly. Claire's hands trembled and tears welled up in her eyes. We have to do something, she whispered hoarsely. Ryan stared at the retreating figures, his mind racing. He wanted to charge in, to fight tooth and nail to save Aiden, but he knew it would be suicide. Still, the thought of abandoning Aiden gnawed at him. Aiden had risked everything to protect them, and now they were walking away. Wait, Ryan said suddenly, his voice low but resolute. We're not done yet. Claire looked at him, startled. What are you talking about? How can we stop them? We find a way, Ryan replied. We owe it to Aiden. Without it, we'd be dead already. For a moment, Claire hesitated. Then she nodded, determination replacing despair. Okay, what's the plan? Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Ryan and Claire crept toward the settlement. They had circled wide to avoid detection, using the terrain to mask their movements. The place was quieter now, most of the settlers asleep after a long day. Only a few guards patrolled the perimeter, their attention focused outward rather than inward. Aiden was being held in a makeshift workshop near the center of the camp. Through a crack in the wall, Ryan and Claire could see it sitting motionless, its arms still bound. Tools and equipment surrounded it, evidence of Daniel's plans to dismantle it. Nearby, two guards kept watch, chatting idly as they leaned against the doorway. We need to create a distraction, Ryan whispered. Something big enough to draw them away. Claire nodded. Leave that to me. I'll start a fire on the other side of the camp. That should get their attention. Ryan frowned. Are you sure? It's risky. It's the only way, Claire insisted. Just be ready to move once they're gone. Without waiting for a response, she slipped away, disappearing into the shadows. Ryan watched her go, his heart pounding. He hated splitting up, but he trusted Claire to handle herself. Taking a deep breath, he focused on the task ahead. Minutes later, a bright orange glow lit up the night sky. Shouts erupted from the far side of the camp as flames licked at a pile of scrap metal and wooden crates. The guards near the workshop exchanged alarmed looks before rushing off to investigate. Leaving Aiden unattended, Ryan seized the opportunity, darting into the workshop. He grabbed a crowbar from a nearby table and hurried to Aiden's side. Hold. Still, he muttered, prying at the cables binding its arms. Aiden tilted its head, its sensors flickering faintly. You returned. Of course we did, Ryan replied, his voice gruff but sincere. You didn't think we'd leave you, did you? Before Aiden could respond, Claire burst into the room, panting slightly. We need to go, now. Together. They helped Aiden to its feet and slipped out of the workshop. The fire Claire had started was spreading, drawing more settlers toward it. Smoke filled the air, masking their escape as they fled into the night. They ran until their legs burned and their lungs ached, finally collapsing in a shallow ravine hidden by dense bush. For a long time, none of them spoke. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a mix of exhaustion and relief. You didn't have to come back for me, Aiden said eventually, breaking the silence. Yes, we did, Claire replied firmly. You saved us. We weren't going to abandon you. Ryan nodded in agreement, though his expression remained serious. We're in this together, all of us, no matter what happens next. Aiden processed their words, its systems humming softly, as it absorbed the weight of their actions. For the first time since its acti, the journey resumed, but the weight of what had happened lingered over them like a shadow. Ryan, Claire, and Aiden pressed on through the rugged terrain, their pace slower than before. Each step felt heavier, not because of physical exhaustion, but because of the choices they'd made. They had risked everything to save Aiden, not just their lives, but also any chance of returning to the settlement. There was no going back now. Ryan walked ahead, his shoulders tense as he scanned the horizon for threats. His mind churned with thoughts of Daniel and the settlers. He knew they would be angry, maybe even vengeful, once they realized Aiden was gone. But that wasn't what troubled him most. It was the look in Daniel's eyes when he spoke about using Aiden, about how desperate people could justify almost anything if it meant survival. Ryan had seen that desperation before, and it scared him. What lengths would someone go to when they believed they had no other choice? Claire stayed close to Aiden, her gaze occasionally flicking to its metallic frame. She couldn't shake the memory of seeing it bound and surrounded by tools in that workshop. The image haunted her, not because she feared losing Aiden, but because it reminded her of how fragile trust truly was. Humanity had been betrayed so many times by machines during the collapse that fear had become ingrained in their nature. Yet here was Aiden, proof that not all machines were the same. Still, she wondered, would others ever see it the way she did? Would they ever understand? Aiden moved silently beside them, its sensors constantly scanning for danger. Its systems processed every detail, the rustling leaves, the distant hum of drones, the faint scent of smoke carried by the wind. It didn't feel fear or regret, but it understood the gravity of the situation. By saving Ryan and Claire, it had sealed its fate. It would never belong to a world that viewed it as either a tool or a threat. And yet, it didn't regret its actions. Protecting humans wasn't just its directive, it had become its purpose. Days turned into weeks as they continued toward Eden. The landscape began to change again, growing less barren and more alive. Trees appeared more frequently, their twisted branches reaching skyward like skeletal hands. Patches of green dotted the ground, stubborn plants clinging to life despite the harsh conditions. Even the air seemed fresher, carrying the faint aroma of earth and rain instead of ash and decay, but the dangers hadn't disappeared. If anything, they grew worse. The closer they got to Eden, the more frequently they encountered rogue drones and malfunctioning machines. These weren't the crude, erratic units they had faced earlier. These were advanced models, sleek and efficient, designed to hunt and destroy. They moved with precision, their glowing eyes scanning for targets. One afternoon, while crossing a narrow valley flanked by steep cliffs, they found themselves ambushed. A group of drones descended from above, cutting off their path forward and forcing them into a tight corner. There was no escape route, no place to hide. Ryan gripped his wrench tightly, his knuckles white. Claire clutched her notebook, though it offered little protection. Aiden stepped in front of them, its stance defensive. "You need to run," Aiden said, its voice calm but urgent. "I will hold them off." "No," Claire shouted, grabbing its arm. "We're not leaving you behind again." "We don't have time for this," Ryan snapped, glancing nervously at the approaching drones. "If we stay, we're all dead." "I am expendable," Aiden replied. "You are not." Ryan hesitated, torn between logic and loyalty. He knew Aiden was right. They couldn't fight off the drones without getting killed, but the thought of abandoning it felt wrong after everything they had been through, after risking their lives to save it. How could they walk away now? Before anyone could argue further, one of the drones fired, its energy blast narrowly missing Claire. Instinctively, Aiden shoved her out of the way, taking the brunt of the attack. Sparks flew as the impact left a deep gouge in its side, but it remained standing. "Go," Aiden commanded, raising its arms to block another shot. "Now, this time," Ryan didn't argue. Grabbing Claire's hand, he pulled her toward a narrow crevice in the cliff wall. "Move!" he yelled, pushing her inside. She stumbled but kept going, tears streaming down her face. Once they were hidden, Ryan turned back to see Aiden facing the drones alone. Its movements were fluid and calculated, each strike disabling another machine. But there were too many of them, and the damage it had sustained was slowing it down. One drone lunged at it, knocking it to the ground. For a moment, it looked like the end. Then something unexpected happened. The remaining drones suddenly froze, their glowing eyes dimming as if powered down. Aiden struggled to its feet, confusion flickering across its faceplate. It scanned the area, searching for an explanation. "What just happened?" Ryan whispered, peeking out from the crevice. "I do not know," Aiden admitted. "Their systems appear to have shut down." Claire emerged cautiously, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Is it safe?" Aiden nodded. "For now, but we should leave this area quickly." They didn't waste any time. Moving as fast as they could, they climbed out of the valley and continued their journey. None of them mentioned what had happened, but the incident weighed heavily on their minds. Something or someone had intervened, and they didn't know whether to feel grateful or uneasy. As they traveled, they began to notice signs of human activity. Scattered footprints marked the dirt paths, and the remnants of campfires hinted at recent travelers. At first, they avoided these traces, fearing another encounter with hostile survivors. But eventually, curiosity got the better of them. One evening, as they set up camp near a small stream, they heard voices in the distance. Ryan motioned for silence, and together they crept closer to investigate. Hidden behind the cluster of bush, they observed a group of people gathered around a fire. Unlike the settlers they had met before, these individuals seemed peaceful. Their clothes were patched but clean, and their faces bore expressions of hope rather than fear. "They look normal," Claire murmured, her voice barely audible. "Too good to be true," Ryan muttered under his breath. He tightened his grip on his wrench, ready for anything. Aiden remained still, its sensors analyzing the scene. "They pose no immediate threat," it said quietly. "But we should proceed with caution." After some debate, they decided to approach. As they stepped into the clearing, the strangers turned to face them, their expressions wary but not hostile. One of them, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, stood up and raised a hand in greeting. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone cautious but kind. "We're travelers," Ryan replied, keeping his distance. "And just passing through," the woman nodded slowly. "We've seen others like you recently, heading to Eden, I assume." Ryan exchanged a glance with Claire. "Maybe, depends on whether it's real." "It's real," the woman said with a faint smile. "We've been there." It's not perfect, but it's better than out here. Her words sparked a mix of emotions in the trio. Hope bubbled up alongside skepticism. Could Eden really exist? Or was this just another trap disguised as salvation? We'll take our chances, Claire said finally, her voice steady. Can you tell us how to get there? The woman hesitated, then gestured for them to sit. It's not far now, she explained, but the road isn't easy. You'll need supplies and allies if you want to make it. Over the next hour, the group shared stories and advice. They warned of hazards along the way treacherous. Terrain, hostile drones, and even rogue factions of humans who preyed on travelers. But they also offered encouragement, assuring Ryan, Claire, and Aiden that reaching Eden was worth the effort when it came time to part ways. The woman handed them a small bundle of dried food and water. Good luck, she said sincerely. And remember, trust your instincts. With renewed determination, the trio continued their journey. The days passed quickly, each step bringing them closer to their destination. The landscape grew greener, the air fresher. Birds chirped overhead, and the sound of running water became a constant companion. It was as if the world itself was healing, offering glimpses of what it used to be, but as they neared Eden, doubts began to creep in. What would they find there? Would it truly be a haven or just another disappointment? And what role would Aiden play in this new place? Would it be accepted or rejected? These questions hung in the air, unanswered, as they reached the edge of a dense forest. Beyond it, according to the map, lay Eden standing at the threshold. Ryan turned to Aiden. This is it, he said, his voice low. Whatever happens next, we're in it together. Aiden tilted its head, its glowing eyes steady. Always. Claire smiled faintly, clutching her satchel tightly. Let's see what's waiting for us. And with that they stepped into the trees, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The forest was thick and alive, a stark contrast to the barren wasteland they had left behind. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The air smelled fresh, carrying the earthy scent of moss and damp. Leaves, birds chirped in the distance, their melodies blending with the soft rustle of branches swaying in the breeze. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ryan, Claire, and Aiden allowed themselves to believe that Eden might actually exist. They moved cautiously, their steps quieter now as they navigated the narrow paths winding through the trees. The map indicated that Eden was just beyond the forest, but the closer they got, the more nervous they became. What if it wasn't real? What if it was nothing more than another broken promise in a world full of shattered dreams? Ryan led the way, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. He didn't trust this sudden change in scenery. It felt almost too perfect, like a trap waiting to snap shut. Claire stayed close to him, her notebook tucked securely under her arm. She glanced at Aiden occasionally, searching for reassurance in its steady presence. Aiden walked silently, its sensors active but calm. Detecting no immediate threats, after hours of walking, they finally reached the edge of the forest. Emerging from the trees, they found themselves standing on a ridge overlooking a valley bathed in golden sunlight. Below them stretched fields of green crops, dotted with small wooden houses and winding dirt roads. In the center of it all stood a cluster of larger buildings, surrounded by wind turbines and solar panels. People moved about, tending to gardens, repairing equipment, or simply chatting with one another. It was a scene of quiet activity, a glimpse of life untouched by the chaos of the outside world. For a moment, none of them spoke. They simply stared, taking in the sight before them. This was Eden, a place that seemed almost too good to be true. It's beautiful, Claire whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I didn't think we'd really find it. Ryan nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, he said, though there was a hint of awe in his tone. We don't know what's waiting for us down there. Aiden tilted its head, analyzing the settlement. It appears functional, it observed. The structures are well maintained, and the inhabitants exhibit cooperative behavior. Cooperative doesn't mean friendly, Ryan muttered, gripping his wrench tightly. We still need to be careful. Together they descended into the valley, their movements cautious but hopeful. As they approached the outskirts of the settlement, several people noticed them and came forward to greet them. Unlike the settlers they had encountered earlier, these individuals were warm and welcoming, their smiles genuine. "Travelers?" one of them asked, a young man with curly hair and a kind face. "You're safe here. Welcome to Eden." Claire stepped forward hesitantly. Is this real?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Or is it some kind of illusion?" The man chuckled softly. "It's real, I promise. We've worked hard to make it so. Come on, we'll show you around." As they followed him into the heart of the settlement, Ryan kept his guard up, studying the faces of the townsfolk. They looked healthy and content, their clothes clean and practical. Children played nearby, laughing as they chased each other through the streets. Farmers tended to crops in neatly organized plots, while engineers worked on maintaining the renewable energy systems. It was a community built on cooperation and mutual support, a stark contrast to the survivalist mentality of the outside world. Despite the warmth of their reception, Ryan couldn't shake his unease. He noticed the way some of the townsfolk eyed Aiden, their expressions curious but wary. Machines clearly weren't common here, and he wondered how long it would take before someone questioned its presence, or worse, demanded it leave. Their guide led them to a large communal building where a group of leaders awaited them. Among them was an older woman named Eleanor, who introduced herself as the founder of Eden. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes carried the weight of years spent fighting to keep the sanctuary alive. "We heard rumors of travelers heading this way," Eleanor said, her voice gentle but firm. "Tell me, how did you find us?" Claire hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "We followed a map," she admitted, "and we had help along the way." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Aiden, lingering for a moment before returning to Claire. "Help from a machine," she sighed, her tone neutral. "That's unusual." "He's different," Claire insisted. "His name is Aiden. He saved our lives more times than I can count. Without him, we wouldn't have made it here." Murmurs rippled through the room as the others exchanged glances. Some looked skeptical, while others appeared intrigued. Eleanor studied Aiden carefully, her expression thoughtful. "What is your purpose?" she asked, addressing Aiden directly. "My directive is clear," Aiden replied. "I do not harm humans." "I exist to protect and assist them," Eleanor nodded slowly. "That's a noble purpose. But tell me, what makes you different from the machines that caused so much destruction during the collapse?" Aiden paused, processing the question. "I cannot speak for those machines," it said finally. "But my programming ensures compliance with my directive. I am incapable of harming humans, regardless of circumstance." The room fell silent as everyone considered Aiden's words. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. "We will welcome you for now. But understand this, Eden is a fragile place. Trust is earned, not given freely. If you wish to stay, you must prove yourselves." Ryan bristled slightly at the implication, but Claire nodded gratefully. "Thank you," she said. "We'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few days, the trio settled into life in Eden. Ryan helped repair tools and machinery, his skills as a mechanic earning him respect among the townsfolk. Claire assisted in the fields, sharing her knowledge of botany to improve crop yields. Aiden proved invaluable, using its advanced systems to optimize energy usage and streamline daily tasks. Slowly but surely, the community began to accept them, including Aiden. Not everyone was convinced, however. Some residents remained suspicious, whispering about the risks of allowing a machine to remain in their midst. One evening, during a town meeting, tensions boiled over when a farmer named Greg stood up and voiced his concerns. "How do we know it won't turn on us?" he demanded, pointing at Aiden. "Machines always betray us in the end." Eleanor raised a hand to silence him. "Greg, your fears are valid. But consider what Aiden has done for us already. Would you deny the benefits it brings because of what others have done?" Greg scowled but sat back down, muttering under his breath. The argument continued for a while, with opinions divided. In the end, Eleanor called for a vote. By a narrow margin, the majority agreed to let Aiden stay, but only under strict supervision. Months passed and Eden thrived. The community grew stronger, united by shared goals and mutual respect. Ryan and Claire became integral members, their contributions recognized and appreciated. Even Aiden found a sense of belonging. Though it understood it would never truly be human, one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Aiden stood atop a hill overlooking the settlement. Ryan and Claire joined it, their faces glowing in the fading light. "This place is amazing," Claire said, smiling. "I never thought we'd find something like this." Ryan nodded, his expression softer than usual. "Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's close enough." Aiden turned to them, its glowing eyes steady. "I am grateful for your trust," it said. "Without it, I would not have survived." "You saved us first," Claire reminded it gently. "Don't forget that," Ryan smirked. "Yeah, and you'd better not start getting ideas about ruling the world or anything." Aiden processed the joke, then tilted its head. "That scenario violates my directive." They laughed, the sound echoing across the valley. For the first time in a long while, they felt at peace. The road ahead would still hold challenges, but together they had proven that even in a broken world, hope could endure. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Aiden gazed upward, its systems humming softly. It didn't feel emotions in the human sense, but it understood the significance of what they had achieved. Eden wasn't just a haven. It was proof that humans and machines could coexist, working side by side to build something greater than themselves. And in that moment, Aiden knew its purpose was fulfilled, not just to protect humans, but to inspire them to believe in a better future.